So let's cut to the start, as they say.
Okay.
How does broadcasting for a game look like? How does the whole flow happen?
It is an engineering marvel. The commentary team is the icing on the cake. I've used this parallel before.
Yes.
That the cake has been baked by somebody else. If there is no commentary, you can still watch the telecast. But if there is no engineering, there is no telecast. And the miles of cables that are laid out, the work that the camera crew and the VT crew and the stats crew puts in, you get the feeling that what we do is a party. It's a discipline that I put on myself, that I try and always remind myself that somebody else is working much harder on the crew to allow you to look like this cool guy who's in control all the time. So we are the icing on the cake. Cake looks terrible without the icing, I agree, but you don't only buy icing.
So if I'm watching a cricket game,
Yeah.
there are two commentators.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Who does what?
There is a caller, and the caller will call. And then there is a summarizer. Increasingly, we have three these days. And the lines are blurring.
Can you give me an example of calling, summarizing, and the third is?
Yeah. So for example, there is, say, Kuldeep's bowling to maybe a Joe Root, or he's bowling to a Stokes. And I'll call the action. I'll say Stokes didn't read the wrong one. He's trapped in front. I pause because I've called the action. I've told people what happened in hopefully as interesting a way as possible. And then why it happened, why did Stokes not read it out of the hand or whatever, that is the call of the summarizer who's been there, done it before. So the roles are clearly demarcated, and it works best when the roles are demarcated like that. Now, sometimes the expert might be offering a point of view and suddenly something happens on the ground. I'm absolutely fine if they keep going and call the action. So sometimes they blur, but it's best if they are demarcated.
So
in my case, it's easier because I set limits on myself. There are parts that I cannot go to because I don't have the bandwidth to. Even if I have the bandwidth, I don't have the CV to justify doing that. So in my case, it's a lot easier. But if you played 100 tests and you're a caller, and then people suddenly say, but why are you asking someone? You know it yourself, right? So but I'd like it to go back to how it is in the football model.
Which is?
Where there's a clear caller and there's a clear expert. And the caller calls, the expert explains.
How do you go about preparing for a game?
At the start of a series, a little bit more. At the start of a test match, a little bit more. Much more on before day one of a test match. I probably have 2 or 3 pages of notes. The stats person would have sent you a stats pack for the day that will give you ground stats.
So you get a
stats.
docket every day.
Yeah, you get a docket every day.
And one before the series as well about what are the important
but
things?
You get 2 kinds of dockets these days. There's someone like Mohandas Menon, for example, who's the perfect all-time great test match cricket commentary stats person. And there is increasingly the analytics person who will tell you, for example, that when Bumrah's bowling fifth stump line to Joe Root, this is what has tended to happen over the past. So you know why. You bring that up only when Root comes into bat, Bumrah's immediately pressed in, then you know why that has happened. You already have those numbers with you, so you've got to have read that before. Sometimes the producer will prompt you in your ear, but the producer's got lots on his or her head. So suppose there's a wicket and Root's coming out. I'll suddenly have what Mohan has already given me, Root's average against spin bowling in the last 2 years. So I've got that in front of me, so I can relate to that. So I'll carry that with me every time.
So how much of what is said is a function of the stats, the analytics team? How much of that is your own gut?
When there was lesser cricket, you remembered that much more. But now there's a game that comes every day. But yes, you do remember. And sometimes you actually then tell the producer, can I get that out? I remember this spell Bumrah bowled in Visakhapatnam. One of the great spells by a fast bowler you'll ever see. And I'll say, I remember he troubled this batter a lot. So do you have a little bit of that? And so they'll put that out. So I've asked for it. The producer will tell me it's ready. And only then will I start leading to it.
So let's break it down to the bits and pieces of broadcast. Here I am. In front of me is the video monitor of the game which is happening.
Yes.
In my ear, the producer is speaking
Yes.
about things which are ready or things which have to happen. Then I have my co-commentators. and I have the stats
Yes.
team right next to me.
Correct.
Then there is a
And you have you have a director in your ear and the producer.
Yes.
And you have someone who's calling you down to the breaks. Because we are not a subscription driven model, we are an advertising driven model. There will be an ad after every over, especially in T20 cricket. So there's pressure to go off as quickly as possible. Then you have a count in your ear saying world is back, Star or Geo not yet. Then there'll be another count saying, okay, everybody back. So you've got these counts constantly in your ear, so you've got to keep playing those counts.
How do you practice?
No, it becomes you get used to it. I mean, fighter pilots fly MiGs, right? This is a lot easier than that. So you get used to it. What you learn is never start a story on the fifth ball. Never ask your expert for a considered comment on the fifth ball.
How much of that is prepared, and how well in advance is that
So
prepared?
so let me see. I've actually got a rundown for you of the first 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I'll give you an idea. This is a rundown from Dharamshala.
Okay.
So I'm typically always assigned to do the first 10 minutes. After you go off the opening titles, I've already recorded the opener in the morning, which the producer has written.
Okay.
So I've recorded the opener. The opener comes out. That is my cue now that it's coming. But I'm hearing in my ear 3, 2, 1, and then suddenly the opening titles are over. The animation starts. So it says map animation and zoom to ground 20 seconds. So that is telling you where all the series has happened. And then you come to Dharamshala for the last test. So I know we've gone Hyderabad, Visakhapatnam, Rajkot, Ranchi to Dharamshala. And then there's a drone shot. If it's ground like Dharamshala, then the drone shot romances the surroundings. Otherwise, it sort of sets it up, and then you come to the locator. So I cannot say, here we are on the third day of this test match, because I know 20 seconds later there's going to be a graphic of that. So I've got to build up something for that 20 seconder. It's got to be crisp, but it's also got to be energy. Suppose you're tuning on 10 minutes before, and you've got someone there's not enough energy, who's stumbling over words, and you're saying, "Nahi, kya hai?" So you've got to have the energy. You've got to be precise. So I never write down my lines for the opener, but I know approximately what I'm going to say on the first line. And I've made notes for what I'm going to say at each point. Because once you get to the match locator, there's crowd shots and there's a match summary. Then we go to the highlights of the previous day. On this one, for example, there's Rohit Sharma's package from the previous day, the Shubman Gill's package from the previous day, the Sarfraz, Bashir, whatever. So that runs 20 seconds without a commentary. So I've got to fill those, but not fill everything, because you also want to just in silence watch Rohit Sharma play that great shot, or watch Sarfaraz play that cheeky shot. So you do that, and then it comes down to pitch hoover and key players. We don't have time for the entire pitch report. So they will show a moving camera across the pitch. It's only about 10 or 12 seconds. So before that, I would have asked the person who's done the pitch report. I have to listen to the pitch report early.
Right.
And I've asked the person, if I have one line, is it okay if I say this line? And they say, yeah, that's okay. So I'll say, yeah, third day, but the track hasn't changed very much. That's all I need to say. So I'll say, this is what the surface looks like. Day 3, this is typically what happens in day 3. But Graham Swan and Sanjay did the pitch report, and they think that it's not changed very much. But I've got to end it in that much time. I cannot go beyond that. And then it'll go to key players. This is the interesting bit, because now today my producer said key players are Crawley, Duckett and Root, Kuldeep, Bumrah and Ashwin. It's the third day in Dharamshala. You've got about 7-8 seconds on each. So I've got to have prepped stats. I've got to have prepped numbers. So suddenly Crawley will come on, and I'll probably say lots of 60s, 70s. He hasn't converted it to 100. England will want that today. That's it, because by now it's gone on to Duckett. On Duckett, I've got to be ready to say, right, he's got 100 in the series, but not too much more. Ashwin versus Duckett should be a good contest today. Let's move on. Joe Root, he's played in 2 different styles. What style are we going to see from Root? Then you come on to Bumrah, Ashwin. So you've got to have numbers. You've got to say Kuldeep's got 18 wickets. He's in good control. And just set up why these 3 are the key players. And then I'll start to get a count in my ear saying Gio's about to leave us, or Star is about to leave us. So I've got to just taper that off, wait for it to go. But now I've got 20 seconds left. I can't get Gavaskar and Swan on in those 20 seconds, because when Gio comes back, they can't already be there. So then you fill for those 20 seconds. I'll get a count in my ear saying 5, 3, 2, 1, Gio's back. And I'll say, very good morning, everyone. Gavaskar's with me, Graham Swan's with me. What do you think? And that is 1 minute before play starts, so that you've heard what the experts have to say, but the ball by ball man, the caller, is armed with the responsibility of hitting every part so that you're not having to drop anything last minute.